Welcome to Beyond the Broadsheet, a podcast by the Lincoln County News. We are a community newspaper based in Midcoast, Maine, and we provide the most comprehensive, in-depth coverage available anywhere of the 18 towns and one plantation that make up Lincoln County. My name is Piper Pavelich, and I'm a reporter here at the Lincoln County News.
And my name is Molly Rains, and I'm also a reporter here. And we have a small dog sitting by, so if you hear it snoring, that's what's happening.
She's just getting her beauty sleep.
Yes.
So today we're going to talk about some of the top stories from our April 10th edition. And then, Molly, what do you have for us later? Can you give us a sneak peek?
Yes, well, I have a discussion of food sovereignty and what it means for Lincoln County.
All right. But first, here are some of the stories from this week.
So we've been hearing since we started about this parking lot. And you are now, the baton has been passed.
It is now me. I remember when we started, it was Elizabeth, and then before me it was Jonathan, and now it's me. But
and which parking lot is this?
Yes. So this is the Bangor Savings Bank in downtown Damariscotta. So that's at 100 Main Street. I realized the other day Damariscotta has two Bangor Savings Banks, and I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's why. And the other one has a nice new parking lot.
Yeah. So I wanted to be super clear. I was like, this is in the downtown. But the whole thing is that the bank has received approval to reconstruct their parking lot behind their building. And that was approved at the last Damariscotta Planning Board meeting on April 7th. So, there wasn't much to say about it. It's a pretty cut and dry project. Even the planning board chair said that the project's fairly straightforward. There was a property abutter, so somebody who owns property right next to Bangor Savings Bank's property, who wanted it on the record that she's disputing the property line, but she is in total favor of the project itself. So that was really the only comment about it. And
nice.
So now it's going to be moving forward.
Parking lot.
I know. Love an easy parking lot. It's going to be 22 parking spaces, which is down from its current 45 spaces.
That's crazy.
I know. It sounds like a lot.
I see things and people are like, you can put that many cars in there.
Yeah. It's to do with one of the town's ordinances about the square footage of the building itself and then the property, and this is how many spaces that they can have.
I feel like I sound crazy, but just sitting through planning board meetings talking about parking lots, there's a lot that you wouldn't think so.
I know.
As a lay person.
But there's a lot that goes into parking lots.
Yeah. Lots of thinking about the angles of the cars, where the cars are going to go, where you're going to put a tree, a crosswalk. Lots to think about. Yeah. So thank goodness we have people to think about it for us.
Yeah. And everyone's saying it's about time that we do this. So
nice.
We're gonna go for it.
Awesome. And then what else happened at that planning board meeting?
Yeah, busy meeting.
Yeah.
So a resident of Damariscotta's Vine Street, Shannon Parker, presented a concept plan for a community green space at a property that we're all calling Zero Vine Street. It's at the end of that dead end road. They're tentatively calling it the Damariscotta Green. The plan is to make the space, accessible to all community members. It's going to have an 8 foot wide graded walking trail that's going to loop around the property. It's going to have specialty areas. So like, a veterans memorial, a reflection garden, just a bunch of stuff for anyone to enjoy. Currently, the property is owned by John and Stephanie Poland, and Shannon said that she's under contract with them to purchase the property. Whoa. And that the sale will be closing in about 3 months or so.
Wow.
So for those of you who heard me say Zero Vine Street and were like, hey, wait, because I did the same thing. At the March Planning Board meeting, a gentleman had come to propose a housing development. But considering the feedback he got from Vine Street residents about, the potential traffic that would come with that on the dead end street, he decided to back off and find a different place to develop that. So who knows, we may be getting a green space for the town.
Another one. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, so we had a snowstorm this past week.
I know. Can you even believe that?
I guess actually kind of more than one, but the one that happened over the weekend or on Saturday, March 29th, our fearless associate editor Sherwood Olin was out visiting some folks on Lewis Point Road, also in Damariscotta, because they have been meeting outside, these neighbors on Lewis Point Road, every week since the darkest days of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's the
5 years.
Yeah, it's the 5th year anniversary of this meetup, which they call Driveway Drinks.
Which I love for them.
Yeah. We got this email and we all got in our inboxes of the tip about this. And I was immediately like, this is amazing. This is so cool.
I know. I was sad I wasn't available to cover this, so we had Sherwood go to it.
Yeah, I was traveling too, but I was jealous.
I know.
It's a BYOB event. Bring your own beer.
Bring your own beverage.
Yeah, any kind. And they all meet outside. There's no place in particular where they meet up. They just kind of
in the neighborhood.
They find each other and then they convene, and they haven't missed a week in the 5 years they've been doing it. And the minimum they ever had was 2 people, and that happened once because of a massive snowstorm. So last week, on March 29th, Sherwood went out there in the midst of the snow and met up with them and got some pictures. Mm-hmm. And he also heard a poem by Jane Gordon, who's a resident of Lewis Point Road, and I'm going to read it. And since that day when we got started, we've never missed meeting or parted, from our firm desire to warm and inspire each other before we departed.
I can't. That's so sweet.
It's a great way to maintain community in some turbulent times, to quote a cliche.
Well, happy 5 years to Driveway Drinks, and cheers to 5 more years.
Sherwood also did the character of the county column this week for us.
Yeah.
And he highlighted John Otterbein.
Yeah. He's a artist, businessman, athlete who lives in Bremen. He's been in the area since the 90s. But he came to his art career kind of late in life. He founded Waldoboro's Wooden Screen Door Co. in 94 and sold it in 2022. And after he sold it, he was wondering what he was going to do with his retirement, and he started drawing.
Yeah, it's awesome. I want to mention that detail about the screen door company stuck out to me because I love making screen doors. It's it's kind of a creative thing to build anything. Screen doors are fun in particular because they're pretty easy, but I love that he was doing something creative and then kind of tapped into even more creativity. Yeah. And I'm sure, I don't know what the doors looked like. You could make them complicated if you wanted to.
But from what I recall from reading it, I think over the course of his career there, he made over 17,000.
Wow. Dang.
Yeah.
17,000 doors.
17,000.
I've made maybe 3, so.
You're almost there, Molly.
Clearly I should be commenting.
But yeah.
That's insane. That's amazing. Yeah.
And then for a while he was a serious semi-professional rugby player. Found his love for rugby in college, played for about 18 years after that.
Takes a special kind of person to be a rugby player.
And now he's preparing for his first solo show opening at River Arts in Damariscotta on Thursday, April 24th.
Awesome.
So his creativity is flying.
Yeah, it's really taking off. I mean, but it was always really high.
It was always,
17,000 doors.
So yeah, very cool guy in our community.
Yes. So I also...
Molly, you went to GSB.
I did. I love to go to GSB. Everybody is always... Well, I shouldn't say this. I go there to report on stories that people are excited to tell me, but I was going to say people are always so excited. But I do get a lot of enthusiasm from the staff and students there, and this was no different. I went there on Friday afternoon, April 4th, to watch as NC Hunt made a delivery of sand to the track team. And this is significant because the track team at GSB is small but mighty, very dedicated, and they do not have a track.
What?
They do practice regularly.
Yeah,
Their team, they compete, they do it all, but they don't have a track. And track coach Sarah Richards was saying, kind of as a joke, she was like, yeah, we have the best long jumpers of any team in the area because
we don't have a track.
Yeah, all we have is long jump pit. But that's not true. They're really good at a lot of events.
Yeah,
they make do, but they do have the long jump pit, and it gets the sand kicked out of it because long jump you come flying in. And so they periodically need more sand, and this is at least the second time that NC Hunt has made that delivery. So it's really fun.
Well, that's very kind of them.
Totally. Talk to some young runners who are also a special kind. So that was fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we also had something in the paper this week that we have once a year, hotly anticipated in the newsroom.
Home and garden.
Home and garden. You might be saying, what? It's an insert, which it's like a 16-page addition to the newspaper. We put it in every spring, and it's got tips on like getting ready for the summer, getting ready for the season, sprucing up your home. So I had some good conversations with some local people, including the folks at Aboka Beads and Jewelry, talking about during spring cleaning, if you find like a broken piece of jewelry, they can help you with that. I spoke with the owner of Midcoast Chic, which is this company that will like spruce up your closet, your house, etc. And Piper, you did some farming.
Yeah, we also had some submitted pieces, one about Hidden Valley Nature Center in Jefferson. And then I also had a piece about Twin Villages Food Bank Farm in Damascotta, who is a nonprofit farm that grows produce for the local food pantries. So it was really great to get them in there as well.
Nice.
So yeah, everybody take a look at Home and Garden.
Yeah, get some ideas. And even though we had 2 snowstorms in the past week, spring is coming.
It's still spring.
We promise. Yeah. It's April.
Even if it doesn't feel like it, it is spring.
When we're talking about Home and Garden, the conversation is always kind of like figuring out when it's going to run, like what edition of the paper it's going to go into, because we try not to do it when there's still super, super cold weather coming, but sometimes it's inevitable.
Yeah. All right. Those local sports lovers of, whoever you are out there listening, we have some highlights for you. Varsity softball is returning to Wiscasset. The middle high school is bringing it back as a girls' spring sport. Awesome. They're going to compete in Class D South this season. Returning head coach Chelsea Taylor said she's very optimistic about it. She said their goal is to have fun, work hard, and compete as best as they can. They're going to have 12 players on the team this year. Everyone's going to get a lot of playing time and experience. There's 4 freshmen on the roster, so they'll get to hone their skills this next upcoming season.
Wow.
So yeah, awesome. And then Madomic Valley girls volleyball is going to be a varsity sport next season. Last season, they successfully competed as a club team against junior varsity opponents. They'll compete as an official Maine Principals Association varsity team in the fall in Class C, and they'll have a 14-game schedule.
Congrats to them. It sounds like sports teams are on the up and up.
Oh, absolutely.
Getting serious.
Yeah. And Madomic Valley High School, the softball team went south for warmer weather. For some training. They have a 16 member team, and they headed to Cocoa Beach in Florida on April 8th to train and play scrimmages through Monday, April 14th.
Good for them. Wow.
Yeah, it's their 4th spring training trip to Florida for the softball program. The first one was in 2008, then 2017, and then 2023. They're going to play 4 doubleheaders in 4 days. 22 kids signed up. 12 are expected to make the team in the upcoming season. And the program will make final roster decisions after returning from Florida.
Wow.
And then they're going to play their first scrimmages in Maine at a play day tournament in Brewer on Saturday, April 19th. So everybody look out and see who's on the roster this upcoming season.
Nice. And then, speaking of rugby, which is funny that it's come up twice in this edition of the newspaper.
I know, because we don't talk about rugby, really.
But we will be now.
Yeah, we will.
Because Lincoln County's high school rugby club is now a thing.
Yeah. Kicking off its inaugural season with its first practice March 26th. The team is coached by Liam Brinkler, Newcastle native, who played at UMaine Farmington.
And they're going to practice at the Central Lincoln County YMCA.
Yeah.
With help from the Y. It's kind of organized through them, so it's not associated with any school.
Yep. Yeah. They're going to have outdoor practices every Tuesday and Thursday at the Great Salt Bay football field in Damascotta,
which is right next door to the Y. Yep. So that's convenient.
Yeah, and that's
awesome.
That's in May. They currently have 13 players, and they're still accepting signups.
Wow.
So.
Piper, do you know about rugby? Because I'm seeing
not really
their games. So I don't know if this is a rugby thing, but it says games are only 14 minutes long.
Yeah, so
80 minutes played in a 15-a-side game.
I know there are 2 different styles of rugby where you can play with 7 players per side or 15 players per side, but I don't know about the timing of matches.
Well, I guess it's fine because it says no experience necessary.
Perfect. So we'll go and we'll watch and we'll figure it out.
It's really excited. I mean, they're going to be competing against other Maine high school teams, and it sounds fantastic. So if you want to sign up, you should email Coach Brinkler at liam.brinkler, brinkler1 or go to nhmyru.org/Lincoln-Eagles/RFC.
Yes.
Yes. So I have been wanting to talk about food sovereignty for a little while.
All right, Molly, let's get into it.
Are you familiar?
Not really.
It's funny because food sovereignty is kind of a relatively new concept, and compared to agriculture, which is thousands of years old.
We just keep developing.
The term food sovereignty is new.
Okay.
The concept of growing food locally and giving it to your neighbors is not.
Yeah.
But in 1996, the term was introduced kind of academically for the first time at this World Food Summit. And then I found the definition that most people use to describe it from a 2007 International Food Forum. The idea of food sovereignty is the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agricultural systems.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a pretty broad concept. And the reason we're talking about it today is because people seized on that idea as kind of the antithesis to very industrialized food systems that are very removed from the communities they serve.
Am I correct in saying, like, for example, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration?
Yeah, or the USDA, or just the oversight that organizations or governments impose on food systems is part of what some people respond negatively to and then turn to food sovereignty. Other people point to, like, large-scale industrialized farming with heavy use of pesticides, fertilizers, etc., or lots of animals raised in the same space. But when the conversation around food sovereignty first got going, and to this day, still a big part of it is around food sovereignty for indigenous people, and specifically in the U.S., for example, like allowing people to find ways to embrace traditional ways of food preparation and like solving problems of indigenous food insecurity and hunger by having people produce food the way they've been doing for thousands and thousands of years without the USDA being like, you can't sell that venison that way, which was happening. And there was like, I mean, in many places, in many indigenous communities deal with food deserts and things like that. So the food sovereignty movement, that's a really important arm of it. So maybe it means reclaiming colonized land for food production and hunting, or empowering people to practice traditional food preparation methods without having the USDA tell them to stop. But in Maine and elsewhere, another part of the conversation that has been adopted by a broader group of people, including like the U.S. government and the Maine state legislature, is food sovereignty as a municipal practice or a municipal ordinance, which for Maine in 2017, there was the Maine Food Sovereignty Act, which said if communities want to take food regulation into their own hands, they can, but they have to pass an ordinance.
Interesting.
So it didn't like blanket Maine and just say, USDA, go away.
Yeah.
It was like, if you want to take this on, you can, but you have to think about it first and enact an ordinance. And the stated goals of that were to improve local control of food systems, help local farmers by exempting them from some fees. It's not totally encompassing. Like, you can't just produce pork in your house. You have to still have some oversight for some things.
Yeah.
And then after that, since 2017, so in the last 8 years, I think about 113 Maine towns have adopted the ordinance to take advantage of it, but I don't know when that number was updated. As about in the last year or so. So it's kind of caught on. And when municipalities adopt it, what people are saying is we don't want our small farmers to have to pay for a commercial kitchen if they want to process tomato sauce. We're just going to take them at their word that it's safe. So in Lincoln County, the first town to allow food sovereignty was Whitefield.
Really?
And, yes.
I'm actually not surprised.
Why?
I'm not sure of, the general food practices and who is farming out there, but I think the population specifically of the Amish community, I don't know how their rules work in terms of of that. But
yeah, that's interesting.
That's kind of the first thing that I would have thought of. Yeah.
That's the first thing people thought when the food sovereignty advocates brought this up at town meeting. They were like, are you doing this because it benefits the Amish?
It's funny. I'm not actually sure how, but for whatever reason, that is the first thing that came to my mind.
It totally does seem, I think just because we think of the Amish as kind of a little bit separate from traditional ways of producing food, like they are definitely using quote unquote traditional methods. But the people who brought up food sovereignty in Whitefield were like, we didn't have the Amish in mind at all.
Interesting.
It's not for them. It certainly could potentially help them. But the way that the food sovereignty ordinance, which is typically based on a template, I think the ones adopted in Lincoln County have been based on the same template. It says that in a direct food producer, meaning farmer, cook, baker, whatever, to consumer, which is me if I want to buy food, transaction, meaning like I buy something directly from the person who made it without any middleman or store in the way. That person is exempt from most forms of traditional food oversight. Like they don't have to go to a commercial kitchen, pay a fee, etc. But like I said, there's exemptions, I think mostly with like poultry and some kinds of meat, most kinds of meat. But there's also ways to get around that. It's complicated. So in Whitefield, when this was first brought up in 2019, the debate was actually pretty extensive. Yeah. And people were saying, people who were skeptical were saying, the fact that this includes processed foods opens the door to potential like contamination events and food safety scares, which I took microbiology in college, really changed my life. I used to be really easygoing about food, and calm. Like I remember eating some questionable things as a kid, like outside all the time. I would eat like stuff in the forest.
Amazing.
But then I took this microbiology class, shout out Professor Peckety at Colby College. And I was like, oh my gosh, everything's teeming with bacteria. So I'm not very chill about this anymore. So I can see where they're coming from. Yeah. And yet the food sovereignty advocates are saying, well, contamination events happen all the time, even in processed foods that have a lot of oversight. Yeah. And a line I've heard a lot is the statement that there have been no adverse health events connected to food sovereignty. I haven't fact checked that. I don't know. That's something people say a lot, though. I've heard it from at least 3 different people advocating for food sovereignty. And so in response to the food safety concerns that were raised in Whitefield, resident Robin Huntley said, well, young people who are interested in homesteading and want to move to Maine, like the kind of young people who want to move to Maine, who the state wants to attract, are interested in like homesteading and living self-sufficient lives. And this ordinance will really appeal to them. Does that track for you?
Yes.
Yeah. And it ultimately passed by a hand-raised vote, so I don't have a margin or anything, but it did pass. Yeah. And then the week later, people in Alna approved it without any discussion at all. Really? Yeah. Which people who are proponents of food sovereignty usually say it's pretty uncontroversial. So I guess that's one point in favor of that. But in my experience, there has been a bit of discussion. I was in Waldoboro last year when...
I was going to say, I think I recall this.
Yes. Yes, resident Haley Carmichael and her family brought the ordinance to the select board, I think kind of this time of year. And said, can we put this on the warrant? We'd really like to see it put in place to protect small farmers in Waldoboro and strengthen our local food system. And the reaction from the select board was mixed. A lot of people were like, yes, we want to strengthen small farmers. We want to empower people to get food locally. But then one select board member, Bob Butler, was like, I worry a bit about food safety, what I discussed before. And she was saying, She also said there's been no health issues associated with it. I just want to say that I feel like it's pretty hard to track that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure how you could really
It's hard to
track
know.
it.
So, but she was also saying her argument in that case is that it puts the onus on the consumer and the food producer to like have a personal relationship and be accountable to one another. So that's one way of looking at it. And in all, she had a lot of local Waldoboro farmers coming in to speak in favor of the ordinance, and they were very compelling. They were saying, I have to pay like, I don't know how much money, I'm not going to name a figure, but like some large amount to go to the farmer's market even to like sell my products. And it's so hard for me to break even. I just want to be a farmer in Waldoboro, you know?
I feel you.
Sounds plausible. And so the select board unanimously added it to the ballot. They were like, we should put this before the voters. And then it did pass by a huge margin. The actual percentage was 89.89% in favor. Yeah. And like a handful of blank ballots. But, so that was like, that passed in November, this past November. And that was the most recent Lincoln County town to do it, but now it's on the ballot in Jefferson. Yeah. And I heard a different conversation than I've ever heard before about food sovereignty when I was at the hearing the other day. Some of the residents were saying that the ordinance, which is adopted from the same template that I believe most other Lincoln County towns have at least referenced when they've produced their ordinances, isn't specific enough when it comes to like defining small scale farms, which are the ones that can take advantage of this, because it doesn't provide a definition for those. And they were like, what if some big farmer comes in, like an industrial farm, and wants to take advantage of this and not process their food, or sorry, not certify or whatever. And so there wasn't really a resolution reached there. And they were also saying, like Jefferson Planning Board Chair Bill Farron was saying, has this been evaluated by a lawyer? Because I don't want to put the town at risk if something bad were to happen. Yeah. And the resident who proposed it, John Olson, was saying it was developed in concert with lawyers, like the template, but the select board didn't really know. They kind of like Waldoboro, they were like, we'll just take this from you and put it on the warrant for people to decide for themselves. So it seemed like everybody was in favor of it because it's very much in the New England way to be like, yeah, we want to do it ourselves. We trust our neighbors.
Especially the Lincoln County way.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Like, let them cook, let them grow stuff, and we'll do our best. And everybody was like, so I just want to confirm that this is less regulation, right? And John Olson, who suggested it in Jefferson with help of Haley Carmichael, actually, was like, I'm an organic farmer. I really want to see this happen. And it was an interesting conversation about the like actual language in the ordinance, which I think that ordinance is now on the warrant. Like they're either going to pass it as it is or reject it, but they could certainly amend it down the road if they wanted to.
Yeah. So when are they voting on it?
They are voting on Tuesday, April 22nd, which is Jefferson's annual town meeting by referendum. And if you are a Jefferson resident, you can vote at the Jefferson Village School from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And there's also a contested school committee seat up, so make sure to vote.
Yeah, get out there.
And check the paper next week for the candidate profiles.
Yeah, Molly will be all over it. Yeah. She'll tell you exactly what you need to know.
Yes. So thanks for listening, Piper, to me talk about food. I think it's so interesting. It's such an interesting confluence of different values, and there are like real reasons to think about this. It's such an interesting question, and like it aligns so well with our community's values to have food produced locally. Yeah. And yet the microbiologist in me is always like, be careful, please be careful when you can food.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder if any other Lincoln County towns are going to be considering it anytime soon.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. 113 towns in Maine. Most of them are kind of in this area too, which I think is interesting, like culturally. Yeah. So.
Well, thank you, Molly.
Thanks, Piper.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Broadsheet, a podcast by the Lincoln County News. Production support is provided by Tyler Davis of Tyality Productions. Theme music by Stu Mahan and Sherwood Olin.
Have a question or a suggestion? Email us at info@lcnme.com. And if you haven't already, please be sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen.
This has been a Lincoln County Publishing Company production.